Welcome back to the Geekcentric Podcast, and welcome to our watch club for Marvel's What If. I know how to deal with this party pooper. Viva Las Vegas! Welcome to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and I'll be your guide through these alternate realities in this Watch Club for What If, Episode 9, the Season 1 finale, titled What If the Watcher Broke His Oath. If you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and the MCU in general, so if you haven't watched this week's episode, you have to wonder, what if you did that and then came right back to join us for some interdimensional conversation? Now, before we all go away to fight Ultron as a interdimensional team of cosmic heroes, let me introduce you to the lovely hosts joining us today. First up, he's the Watcher, Justin.
I'll do you one better. Why Gamora?
We'll get to it. But what if he was slightly louder and had watched so much more? He'd be the Watcher, Kevin Hudson.
What if Gamora? Does that work?
And sure, he's the Watcher, Kevin Hudson. But what if he was slightly shorter, much higher, and had watched even more through the power of reading? He'd be the Reader Watcher / birthday boy, Darcy Hudson.
Yeah. Watching stuff I'm reading sounds weird.
I mean, you do.
You technically are, if you think
Yeah.
about it.
You're watching what you're reading. Yeah. How are you guys doing after this this epic finale?
I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Yeah.
Doing good. Yeah. What a fun culmination of the last 10 weeks or so. 9 weeks.
I think so, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that, 9 episodes. We finally made it. I think this was a pretty excellent first season of this show. So I'm stoked to get into it. But before we do, let's go over the intro. You have been chosen for a mission that is both highly dangerous and absolutely necessary for the continuation of life as you know it. At first, I scoured eternity for one true hero. Then I saw the bigger picture. This mission requires a team, the perfect combination of skills and experience that alone will triumph. You aren't just our best hope to save one universe. You are my last hope to save all of them. You are the Guardians of the Multiverse. Ugh. When that happened, when he said Guardians of the Multiverse, did you lose it?
I got excited. I'm just like, I'm glad to know the name for the team. I like the team already, so just the name fits it very on the nose. So
dope.
But you're right.
Yeah.
It really was that moment that cemented, like, okay, we've just been on this ride for 8 episodes, and now here we go. You know, it was a great sort of pump you up moment to sort of get you going for the episode.
I thought it was so good. Let's talk about the episode itself. Maybe go over some of our overall thoughts, just kind of high level. Kevin, I'll let you kick it off this finale.
I think it did a really solid job of wrapping things up fairly nicely. I mean, maybe a little too conveniently, but we'll obviously break down specifics as we go along here. But no, I really came around last week when I finally got what they were trying to do with the show. Mm-hmm. I was a little unsure, and I was very skeptical as that was what they were actually going to do, was bring all these together, especially this soon. But after last week's episode, I was fully on board for it, and I thought this was a nice sort of second part conclusion to that bigger conclusion that we've gotten. And I thought, yeah, overall, it was a great way to wrap up those episodes and tie them all together. It felt natural. They did such a good job in such a short amount of time of making it fit together naturally.
I would agree with you. Yeah, I'd agree with you that I think most of it felt natural. But again, we'll get into that. Justin, your overall thoughts, my friend?
I'm a bit confused by this episode. Like, I really don't know. There's parts that I like. There's parts that I really didn't like. I think it felt overly rushed and not nearly as focused as other past episodes have. It was surrounded by some really cool action sequences and some some funny quips, but at the end of it, it left me a little bit whelmed and had me rethinking if we really needed a team up as a season finale. It just kind of made me really sort of question the purpose of it, other than just it being just a wow ending. And, just kind of fell short for me.
Okay. Cool. Darcy?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, like Kevin said, like when you put it together with the last episode, it's a really nice 2-part finale. And it also felt like I got very strong endgame vibes. With the last episode being like the Infinity War, it's a very 1-2 punch finale. And it felt really like Kevin said, a lot of things felt right. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I mean, I do understand where Justin's coming from. It did seem to go a bit fast. But at the same point, I don't need to see a whole episode of them forging the bonds. They're going to fight together. I want to see them fight together.
Sure.
I'm happy that they got to that point pretty quickly, because that was probably some of the coolest scenes in the whole show, was just that fight, the whole 15-minute fight almost. I loved it all.
Absolutely. And I think, it as a second punch from last week's episode, I think the plot does move nice and quick. And I actually thought for this episode, the humor landed with me a lot more than in some previous episodes, especially with Party Thor, who I actually thought worked so much better in an ensemble cast than on his own. I did think, though, to Justin's point, I thought that some of the twists and turns, especially near the end, felt really underbaked and kind of just like, was that necessary? Did that need to happen?
Yeah,
which
there's a whole lot of that.
Right, which we'll get into. But I think the way that they sort of landed the ship, I think was good. I think they actually managed to get that done. And I think that, even though we didn't get any clear indication of how this would play into the MCU overall necessarily, I think the series was meant to hammer home, no pun intended, the concept of the multiverse to more general audiences, right? Before Spider-Man and the Doctor Strange movies.
Exactly. That's what this show really is. It's a primer. Right. It's not meant for every single MCU fan to sort of be necessary viewing in terms of storyline or plot elements. This is more just conditioning us to getting used to seeing alternative versions of characters or alternative timelines, that sort of thing. And in that regard, I think it really succeeded. My only concern now is, if the MCU moves forward doing this, will the show have the same kind of impact on a season 2 if we've already now seen it live action at that point?
Right. You would think they'd have to do something really, really different, which I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. But I'm actually going to save that all the way to the tail end of this Watch Club. First, I'd love to kind of go over, I know, for some of us not feeling as hot on the episode, that's cool, but I definitely know there were some amazing moments in the episode. I want to know, just shout them out. What was one of your favorite moments in this finale?
I loved the shield to shield combat with Black Widow and Captain Carter. I thought that was amazing, and especially as they get to that climax of like the helmet reveal with the arrow in the eye. I thought all of it was really good. It was well choreographed, and like that's where this episode really shines for me is its sort of ability to choreograph action sequences so well in an animated space. It did it so well. I also really liked Mjolnir's hammer, the multiplied Mjolnir.
Oh, that was so cool.
Just surrounding him as a ball. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing the hammer multiplied definitely goes to show, like, if Doctor Strange and Thor teamed up going forward, they could definitely be a force to reckon with, just, even on the regular Doctor Strange. Overall, that whole fight scene just made me think of Endgame when they're teaming up on Thanos for the final, like the three of them
punching back and forth,
the quick camera movements and spinning around, and like every time he turned, he was getting hit in the face by something. That whole fast-paced fight little clip there was awesome. That was definitely highlighted the episode for me.
Yeah, man. And I did think it was a pretty dope way of using zombies as well. I thought the way that Doctor Strange brought in those zombies just to pile on top. And then we got that reveal of seeing Scarlet Witch zombie-fied, even though she didn't really do anything that well.
She has the power of one stone. He had all six. So I mean, or five fair. At that point, I guess.
That's
so,
fair.
I mean, I understand why he was so much stronger than her.
Yeah.
And I think another thing outside of obviously the incredible action was the writing that you mentioned earlier, Nate. The banter was so much better. The lines of dialogue were so much better. the relationships just like, or the conversations even just flowed naturally, and it felt like these were characters we'd spent 5 years growing up with through 5 different movies, and then all of a sudden coming together for that first Avengers movie. It really did have that same sort of feeling to it, and so shout out for, I think that's really tough to only have a few minutes with these characters, but to make it feel like there was so much more going on there. It was just, yeah, I just felt a connection to the characters that is pretty tough to do when you've only seen them for 30 minutes or so.
And it was cool to see those small moments of them recognizing that, yes, they know each other, but that there are those differences, right? Like we see how Killmonger, like Eric, responds to his cousin saying that like he's stolen from or he's stolen before or something like that, right? Like we see Natasha and Peggy sort of have this somewhat type of relationship, but they know that they're from a different universe. Like it was cool to see those sort of little small moments that the characters were able to sort of recognize.
I feel like that's like more credit given to this episode than it deserves for that. I don't think I was as connected with the characters towards the end here. I just feel like they were all just kind of plucked and placed, and they served their purpose to, close out this season with a Avengers Endgame relived moment, right? That's pretty much it. To say that, we did get only half an hour with this group of characters, but to compare it to 5 movies or of Avengers movies and say that's the same. I didn't see that. I feel like that's what's lacking from it.
I just think that outside of specific character interactions or anything, given the format of the show being that it is just weekly episodic, obviously you're not going to get that same connection and that same attachment to the characters that you would over several 2-hour movies and whatnot. But I just think for the condensed time that they had, and I think for what they were trying to achieve with this first season, it was literally a miniature version of watching that whole Endgame saga play out in a small little cartoon, different version of it. And now I think they can completely separate themselves from anything established in the MCU going forward. They can completely change the storylines and take them out into crazy different places. We've wrapped up the familiar now under a different sort of veil, and now we can go completely buck in the second season.
Yeah, I think if we're looking at how this episode, almost to a certain degree, really does follow the structure of episode 1 in the sense that, yes, it again, to your point, Kevin, familiar, right? Where maybe it doesn't do exactly the storyline, but again, it is very much Endgame. Justin, I will agree with you that Eric was probably, Killmonger specifically, was one of the most disappointing aspects to this episode, in that he basically disappears for the entire episode. Until that ending, right?
He conveyed more with his intentions with not saying anything versus actually saying anything on screen. The way he's interacting with the Ultron helmet. You knew he was plotting.
Sure,
after already knowing what that character was.
But to the point that you were making of interaction, I get where you're coming from, because he just kind of fell into.
But I think that was his whole plan. He hid in the shadows when they were forming the plan. He's like, I'll be in that second phase where we'll meet everyone. I'll let you do all the dirty work, the grunt work, the hard work, and I'll reap the benefits once you've taken him down. That's him again showing that brilliance that he had in that previous episode in order to take over Wakanda, that strategic planning.
Again, going back to Endgame and Infinity War in particular, when Doctor Strange sees all those outcomes and only one thing works, this is very much the same thing. The only way for the Watcher to get what he needed to happen was for this group of heroes to have Killmonger betray them and everything like that. Everything had to happen the way it was. So that makes sense. And I also understand why they did this episode when they did, because it was a clear and present threat to the Watcher. He wouldn't go off and spend a whole other season watching something else, waiting to resolve this. This was the whole season, was him realizing this was coming, in a sense, and trying to find this team to put together.
Yeah, and speaking of sort of the structure of the series, that actually brings us to our next question from Timothy in Barrie, Ontario, who asks, wait. Where did Gamora come from? Am I missing something?
Yeah, I think this confirms that this was the missed episode that we never got. So this would have probably been somewhere in the latter half of the season leading to this finale where we would have seen that. But I think this is one of the clearest indications of how rushed and how sort of poorly managed the story was by not even just introducing that character ahead of time.
But I mean, because of COVID, they weren't able to do it, and I didn't feel cheated or like the episode suffered. I was like,
That's
okay,
so
this
funny.
because
That's so
we'd
funny.
seen 8 other what if scenarios, we can just go, okay, so in hers, she kills Thanos apparently
Yeah.
with this stone crushing machine, and now she's here. Like, I don't even need that backstory
It would
necessarily.
be nice to have it.
It would have been
but-
great to
yeah.
have it, but
It would have been
didn't-
cleaner. It would have been cleaner too,
Sure.
because you already have all this backstory of all these other people, and now you just, oh, here's Gamora. Oh, okay. Like I 100% agree that COVID was probably the reason why something had happened and delayed. But what was that? Like, we already know that the voice actress wasn't, unless they were intending on getting Zoe Saldana for Gamora. Maybe something happened there and they decided to scrap it. But I'm wondering what would have happened. Maybe it's just they didn't get the animations done or something.
Well, I feel like there's 2 stories there, considering she was with Sakari and Stark. Like, I'm not sure if you guys ever saw the Lego set that was released for What If,
Yeah.
but there was
I
a
was just gonna bring it up,
Sakari
yeah.
and Tony Stark armor. So I'm just wondering if that was also was that the 9th story, and then Gamora
That
made
is,
an
yeah.
appearance in his story.
And
Who
I
was
mean,
the
so-
story following in that?
Yeah.
It was following
situation?
both of them.
Well,
It
yeah,
was
but
following
like,
both of them.
there's what change happened? Was it the change that Tony got sent to Sakaar, or was it that Gamora was sent to Sakaar? Like,
It's
I feel
the
like
rocket in Avengers. He
Yeah.
sends the rocket up, and then instead of falling back into Earth's portal, he falls into a portal that takes him to Sakaar.
Oh,
I
that's
understand.
cool.
I
Gets
get
captured.
that makes sense. But why are you saying it like it's like a set in stone thing? Was it like did you read a script or something like that? Like you're saying.
Well,
with
though
such
there was a
confidence.
lot of rumors that were online about how that was going to come about, how he found himself basically as the Hulk.
Because people had
gladiator.
different theories about these different episodes before they aired, and a lot of them did come true. So, if there's any rumblings about that, that makes the most sense.
And we did see clips of, I believe, portions of Gamora in that episode in one of the trailers. I also, I want to shout out that Lego set as well. It's the only one that comes with Uatu as a minifig. And so to see him as a minifig there kind of makes me feel like that episode at least would have been near the later half of
Yep.
this season, because
100%.
obviously he's sort of involving himself more and more. So I think that, at least from a Lego story perspective, makes a little sense.
Another reason why it was removed due to COVID reasons was because the story would make more sense as a season 2, where he is intervening more now that he's already broken his oath. Like, I'm wondering if that is now the thought line that they were going with when they had to chop one of these episodes off the list.
I mean, if they find a way to alter the storyline based off of what we've seen in Lego sets, based off of, maybe still keeping the Sakari and Stark and what have you, then yes, I could see them fitting that into a season 2. But honestly, I kind of feel like if it ends up being like the lost episode that maybe we get somewhere down the line that fits within season 1, I'm fine with that too. I want us to talk about the aspect of the betrayal from Killmonger. Again, kind of finding a way to make the ending different from Endgame. What did you guys think of this twist? Was it a little too obvious for you? Did it feel rushed? What did you think about the Killmonger betrayal at the end?
All of the above.
Yeah, for sure.
I do think the weakest part of the episode is how easily the threat, no matter who was possessing it, be it Killmonger, be it Zoloft, is it? Or be it Ultron, whoever had it, was pretty easily managed by the end of the episode.
Yeah, and again, I think the main thing that was the takeaway there was the fact that they had to be outside. Like the only time he could isolate them was when they weren't being wielded by someone. And he took that snapshot in time and froze it in it for eternity type thing. So I feel like that the lead up to that was really cool. Again, I do understand that. I mean, the Killmonger betrayal did seem kind of rushed. But someone had to betray them, and he was the only character that we've seen.
Oh,
so
but it was
far
obvious too.
that has that story to him. So I understand why they did that route. I was really, really excited to see a more comic or the most comic accurate Zola so far.
And I also wonder, I don't know if the idea there was that Killmonger was the biggest threat based on that betrayal. I think that was just an opportunity that Doctor Strange takes advantage of, because now he's got essentially an eternity to figure out how he's going to get those stones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think
himself
that's
out
the
of
bigger
there.
takeaway from that.
Right.
That's enjoying.
I really thought it was interesting the fact that he called Uatu a friend. Like he I feel like that almost leads to, like, in the way that they were kind of almost overseeing the whole thing. How long has Supreme Strange been working with the Watcher on this? Like, was it like just after the last episode this happens, or has there been some time? Because clearly time does not mean a thing to the Watcher in his universe. So how long has Doctor Strange or Stephen Strange been speaking with him to call him a friend so casually there?
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if how they move forward with Doctor Strange into a season 2 and how that sort of changes him. But I think that ending, I don't think it hit as hard as maybe they wanted it to. I think it did play to what the character of Killmonger in this series was going for, right? Yeah. That power hungry idea of like, you can have what you want and you can have what you want and I can have what I want. And so I get that, but I just felt like it just sort of felt like obvious. It just happened. Well, it was obvious, but it also felt like it was preventable. Like, why was he on the team in the first place? Like, Watcher, you saw what he did. Why would you want that?
Because he needed it. It was the 1 in 14 million chances. Like, you got, you're okay.
Maybe he needed him because he knew that was going to be the outcome. Yeah. I could agree with Darcy on that. He needed Killmonger because he knew he was going to do a play for the Infinity Stones, and the only way that he was going to be able to lock them in that pocket portal time
was with that betrayal.
Is one with that betrayal happening, right? Like, I see how and why that's there. You've done a good job, Darcy, of connecting those dots. I think the episode could have done a better job. But
well, the way I connected the dots immediately was the fact that it was Strange making that realization. The one that we saw in Infinity War do the calculations and find that one way out, even though it seems like they lost in doing so. So the fact that
isn't it the Watcher that puts them in that?
Yes, but it's Strange who starts locking them and freezing them in. So this is what we need to do. It's my job, because it's the same thing that he's trapped in his own universe. So he recreates that bubble. He knows how to isolate universes now. Like you said, it's a pocket dimension, and he's essentially in his hands.
Well, that's frozen that's essentially going to be coming back. In some form or another.
And the Watcher's obviously got to be keeping an eye on Strange. So I feel like we will see him again in some way, shape, or form. He's almost like a Watcher Junior now.
Well, I mean, that kind of brings me to before we kind of talk about where we think season 2 is, let's talk about the ending of this episode. What did you think of where everyone ended up? Did you think that they were going to use, where Natasha ended up as a way to bring her back, even for a second? I know obviously that's not the case because Loki was there and she killed Loki or whatever. But even for a split second, did you get that feeling that maybe this was how this series was going to connect to the MCU?
No.
No,
I don't think that the intent of this show is to be overtly directed to the MCU. It's to be inspired, and we know that there's things that might peek its way over, but I don't know if the intent is for the show to necessarily like have that much of a direct impact. But with what you're saying in regards to just like where everyone ended up, I think we all assumed. I think based on the guidance of our own Watcher Darcy, he let us know that more than likely they were just going to be going back to their universe, where they came from, their timeline. And what's interesting here is that at least, and this kind of played out as a theme throughout the episode, but we got closure to all of those little what if moments that happened throughout the season already, and we got to see what for the moment a Cap Avengers team up would look like, with Nick Fury apparently being very accepting of the fact that you're not my Natasha, but you have her spirit. So I thought that was
totally.
Yeah, see, you said it. It was wonderful. It wrapped up all of those stories from this first season quickly, easily, and with a nice little bow. And I think, I'm happy with where all those characters are, and I don't ever need to see them again, quite frankly. I think they're now off to do their own adventure, and if there's a bigger, badder threat in season 2, let's see bigger, crazier versions of different characters in season 2 that'll then have to come together to stop something from happening, with maybe Doctor Strange coming back, being in possession of such a powerful little cube.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was a great way to wrap up this stuff. And if there are stories to be told with with these characters again, they'll probably be done in like a comic form. They always release what if series frequently because fans are always clamoring for more of that stuff. So now that they have a wealth of character growth and already like that, what's to say they can't do a little 5-issue miniseries on what Cap Carter reuniting with Steve and the Hydra Stomper, or the other universes. That's how I'd want to explore those stories, and I'm all on board for new characters, bigger stories in season 2.
I did think it was nice to see Uatu, break his oath, obviously to save the multiverse, but also in these sort of small little ways where he was able to give Natasha the life that she sort of wanted back again, right? That she had lost. And I thought that was really nice. Again, obviously we know now that she is not our Natasha in the MCU back again, but for a split second, I was just like,
I don't know why.
Wait, what? Because, dude,
it
how
would be
sick would that
bonkers
be?
if they just like had her jump through a portal and then all of a sudden it's live action,
Right?
You know, with Scarlet in the scene, right? Like,
I would be into it. I'd be into it, but obviously that didn't happen. But what did happen is we did get our first end credit scene with that universe's Natasha showing up with Captain Carter and showing Captain Carter the Hydra Stomper, saying there's someone inside. So 2 questions. Obviously, I mean, I think we know who it is, but who do you think it is, and how do you think this came to be?
I don't think it's Steve Rogers.
Really? Is that too obvious?
I mean, that's
it'd be
certainly
interesting.
it's certainly
just
the
throwing it out
obvious.
there.
It is the very obvious answer. And then my only question would be when she came back, when Captain Carter came back through the portal, Fury did very much make it seem like Steve was gone. And so maybe it's a case of they didn't know that he was simply frozen or locked in time somewhere in that suit, but otherwise.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's her, Bucky. He on a mission trying to get her back or whatever. He fell into an ice floe or was lost or taken by something or whatever.
Interesting.
I mean, anything can happen in the comics, and this is just an extension of that. So, like, if they
right, because it was pirates that were looking for him, right? So it kind of makes sense that they would fish him up or something like that. I like that. I do think, for me, I actually just saw it as it was a gift from the Watcher. You know what I mean? It was a nice little like moment just to say, like, the Watcher was like, listen, I hear you, Peggy. I'm sorry I can't send you back to be with Steve, but he just like, you know what, I'll send a Steve your way, and so maybe it just showed up randomly
because
and these pirates had it.
Would that really be breaking any rules if you took a character right before they were going to die in one timeline and then just pluck them later into that timeline? So you're not changing any of the history in between those two events. You're just sort of propelling it forward in a different direction. I wonder if that is breaking any of his interference rules.
It seems like it.
So I kind of got to get a different take from it, considering he was so willing to give Black Widow a new home. Still no Hawkeye there. I feel bad for her when she finds that out, but moving past that, the fact that he was so adamant against taking Peggy to a new universe, he was like, no, that one needs a Captain Carter. I feel like it's almost because he knew that Steve was there somewhere. Like, maybe he didn't put him there, but he knew that he was lost at some point in the past. And, knowing comics, he'll surface again eventually type thing. So I'm wondering if that was his intention in that moment.
Interesting. Yeah, totally. And I think that's, that's a great segue into getting your overall thoughts and final score for this episode, which we're going to be rating on a scale of 1 to 5 encapsulated Ultrons. And then at the end of that, if you also want to give your final What If Season 1 rating, which we're going to be rating on a scale of 1 to 5 Watchers. So, Kevin, we'll start with yourself.
While I don't think it quite landed or had that sort of same big feel as the previous episode, I think that really was the highlight, the peak of the series. I think this episode, for me at least, did a nice job of wrapping up these stories that we had been following. I think they had so much on their plate. They were, wrapping up 8 separate storylines into one sort of, cohesive little bow. And I think for that, they did a tremendous job with it. I think the episode was full of tremendous action, maybe some of the best dialogue we've seen in the whole show. And I just think it really highlighted this phase. This felt like phase 1 of What If. And, it made me excited to see a phase 2. And I think that's a testament to the producers and everything. If anything, this episode highlighted that more Gamora might not have been a good thing, because that was some of the worst voice acting I think we've had in the show. And so a full episode, I don't know if I would have loved that so much. But anyways, the episode did what I wanted it to do. And I think in terms of a microcosm of wrapping up this whole story, it did a really good job. So I'm going to give it 4.7 out of 5 encapsulated Ultrons.
All right.
And then again, expanding on that, because this was really just a microcosm of the bigger microcosm that the show was. It really did feel like they were just showing us a cartoon version of the MCU, the first 4 phases in an alternate universe. And I think in terms of conditioning us to get ready to see multiverses and different timelines and characters that we might not be as familiar with, or at least different versions of those characters, I think this show is a perfect primer, and I think that's all it was ever intended to be. I don't think they ever wanted it to feel like it was part of that MCU. It was an extension of that. And I've said so many times, I don't want it to feel too much like an animated show. I don't want it to feel too much like an animated show. And yet, by the end of it, I was like, they were able to do things in this episode and the whole series that only could be done in an animated format, and it was fun and enjoyable, and I accepted it as being separate from what we're accustomed to with the movies and everything. But seeing a Doctor Strange dragon and then the giant squid monster, I mean, I'm not sure how well that would translate if our live action Benedict Cumberbatch is turning into a dragon or a giant squid monster.
I mean, maybe we'll see one day. Maybe we'll see.
But I just think that this lent itself to be able to do that sort of stuff. It's done such a good job that it's opened me up to, I would watch other animated series if it were done with this level of commitment to characters and production and everything like that. So overall,
we got them.
Yeah, they got me. Unbelievable. I mean, there were some dips. There were some episodes that didn't really work, maybe even felt like filler. But overall, I think there were more episodes that I really enjoyed than that I didn't. And I didn't not enjoy any episode in particular. So overall, a solid run from start to finish. I will give this 4.3 out of 5 watchers.
Nice. All right. Okay. Justin, what do you have to add to that, my friend?
Well, yeah, I think it goes without saying. I think this episode was a huge miss. It didn't really shine, and it felt rather rushed. It didn't have a focused story like past episodes have had, and I think that could be said about the last 3 episodes, right up to Party Thor. Yeah, but in the end, it left me feeling like this episode was a little incoherent, a little rushed, and it lacked a lot of personality that was showcased at the earlier episodes of this series. I think it was a huge mistake to cut the Gamora Tony episode in the context of this episode. I understand things probably prevented that, but I just think that it only highlights how disjointed this episode feels without really having an understanding or a background to her character. However, the real plus for me and this whole thing was the action and seeing the team ups. That was great. Like many of the episodes we've seen, the action is very cinematic, visually stunning. I love the shield-to-shield combat, like I said. The zombies falling from the sky was epic. 100% that saved the score for me. But I just think this episode could have benefited to be a little bit longer, giving a little bit more breathing room between moments and focus on characters, and maybe leaving me wondering more about what's next. I didn't like that many of the cliffhangers which seemed like another layer of what if to every episode, felt like they needed to be resolved in this episode. I don't think that was the case. I think the idea was to just plant the seed and introduce the question. I didn't need to see that closure for that story. But with all that, I'm going to say that this episode, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 encapsulated Ultrons. But apart from that episode, I got to say I enjoyed this series overall. It had its ups and downs, as I've already sort of explicitly said. But the series does a really good job at, as Kevin said, kind of just setting up alternate takes to the stories and characters that we know and love from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not enough can be said about the attention to detail in every episode that perfectly captures the moments from the MCU which they are mirroring, as a reminder as fans of what we know and what we're familiar with. The animation style was fantastic, like very graphic and bold, with really next level 3D styles. And with that came a serious attention to action and that sort of spectacle, and a score by Laura Cartman that just felt very inspired by the MCU while also adding something new. Everything about this series feels reminiscent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And A.C. Bradley and Brian Andrews, they did an unbelievable job of bringing this series to life. But apart from those positives, I think the only negative I would say is some of the performances and voices that they were able to get back for this role. Again, I understand COVID, but I think we've also heard of a lot of people who were able to lend their voice in full acting roles and made it work from home. And I would have loved to have seen, Chris Evans come back, Zoe Saldana, and James Spader, as I had mentioned before. I think I would have appreciated those characters more than Kurt Russell. So I just wish they had really swung swung for the fences to really kind of get all of those characters. But for Marvel's first crack at animation, I think they nailed it. They were able to reimagine iconic moments and also bring in new stories from the comics and add the MCU flair to those new stories. They found a balance between the past and what's new. I don't think it ended strong, but personally, I am excited for future stories of What If, and who knows, seeing even some new MCU stories that we've currently gotten reimagined in What If. So for that, I'm going to give this series a 4 out of 5 watchers.
Darcy, do you have anything else to add to that?
Well, I'm definitely leaning more Kevin's way on this episode. Definitely enjoyed it. Thought it was a really good follow-up to last week's episode. I like the fact that we got some closure on some of those stories. We like I said, I want to see new stories going forward. So just getting that closure on what could have happened is very satisfying to me, because now I can put that story out of my mind and at least it's wrapped up as far as I'm aware. In terms of the whole story, I liked the fact that this again felt like a What If, except the Watcher was the main character. He wasn't narrating himself because he was taking part in this episode to a very much larger degree. He can't narrate what's happening right now. I mean, no one does that. It's kind of weird. So yeah. I really enjoyed it. Again, the Killmonger thing did seem kind of flat to me, but the more irksome detail was the fact that we didn't get any story behind Sakari and Stark and Gamora there. That was, again, the one point I'm agreeing with Justin with on this episode is the fact that I do want more and feel like that this episode is suffering because we don't have that backstory. So again, with the action bringing that up, bringing back into the fold and stuff like that, this episode's probably up there, one of my favorites. I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 encapsulated Ultrons. So going into the season, though, I mean, I've already talked about how I liked so much of this. Like, there's a lot of 5 out of 5 episodes for me. It's done a lot of the comic stories really, really well and bringing them to the screen in some format. So I really enjoyed a lot of it. Like start to finish, I was invested in the series, with the exception of the Party Thor episode kind of killing that momentum. But again, I now like Party Thor more than that episode because of what I've seen in the last one. So again, they even bring justice to their bad episodes, it seems. So I really appreciate that aspect. I'm going to have to go and give this season a 4.8 out of 5 Watchers. Jeez, wrong character there. It was really, really well done. Again, with the exception of those stinkers, it was with the exception of those stinkers, it was a huge success in my book. So I'm definitely excited for more stories in what season 2 has to bring. And with the multiverse, being blown open with the Fantastic Four and X-Men around the corner, I'm hoping we see some more What If stories featuring newer characters, like Kevin's saying. Let's go new.
Yeah,
okay,
we've seen MCU. Let's see some new stuff, right?
We'll get to it. Hold on, just for a little bit longer. I thought this episode was a great time. I am leaning more towards the Hudson Clan on this one. I think overall the culmination of these characters as the guardians of the multiverse, like that in itself, as Kevin, as you put it, was such a beautiful encapsulation of what I think they wanted to have this team end up being. And I thought the episode, from a pacing perspective, I actually didn't mind it. I thought it wasted no time at all and got to the parts that we wanted to see. I do agree with you, though, Justin, from the standpoint of the how easy it was to just say, I have this box that can suck up the Infinity Stones. Having the episode that would have explained where that came from or how that was created or what that was all about definitely would have helped that not to feel as cheap. And I agree with you from that standpoint, from some of those solutions where it was just like, oh, that came out of nowhere, but it didn't, because it was originally intended to be a bigger deal in the previous episode or previous episode. I do think that the Killmonger twist, as you were saying, did definitely fall flat. I think it was intended to maybe be a little bit of a bigger moment. Maybe they, Justin, to your point, with a little bit more time, they could have padded that out and had maybe a little bit more impact with that character, maybe showing up once or twice besides the beginning and end of the episode. But overall, as I said, they landed the character stories in a nice way. Like, I like that it's, and a lot of these stories can get a little bit darker. I think maybe for Ultron and Eric's case, it didn't end in a nice way. But I thought it was pretty cool, and I'm excited to see where they go with these characters in the future. I thought the episode was solid. I had a great time. I was smiling so much and laughing at moments of like just seeing two shields on screen at the same time. So overall, I'm going to give this episode the same as I gave last week's episode, a beautiful 4 out of 5 encapsulated Ultrons for the season. Obviously, I agree with a lot of what you guys mentioned. Losing Gamora was a shame, but I think, it would have. I think having COVID messing things up, I understand. Like I get that aspect of it, and so I think they were just probably too far in production for them to make any sort of change. And with what they were able to salvage from it, I think it still worked. The season was very much a season 1, though, right? Like in the sense that they were trying to see what the responses from fans would be. There were definitely stuff that worked. I think the series started off strong, but then, Zombies episode for me it didn't do it for me as much as it did for you guys. And then, of course, I think we all agreed on episode 7, Party Thor, as the weakest of episodes, even though I thought he was great in this finale. Most of the voices on the show, even though they weren't the real ones, I thought actually were pretty good. I thought they did a decent job. But when they stood out, they almost really stood out. And especially, right, as we were all calling out, when you set Ultron as your main villain and you don't pull in Spader,
don't get James Spader, there's a problem.
That's a problem. But overall, I think this was a solid and mostly consistent first season. So I'm going to give What If Season 1 a big ol' 4 out of 5 watchers. Now, before we wrap up this final episode of Watch Club for What If Season 1, Marvel Studios president, another wonderful, beautiful Kevin, he confirmed that there would...
Not nearly as high.
Well, maybe... he's a variant of our Kevin. You never know. Like, they both wear a lot of baseball hats, from what I'm noticing. But he confirmed back in December of 2019 that there would be a second season of What If. So I need you all to look into your, the infinite wisdom of the multiverse and tell me, what do you see in a season 2, or what do you want? I mean, we kind of already touched upon it, but
I honestly hope that we sort of move on from the stories we've seen here. Obviously, there are small little threads that they can bring in, and with that post-credit scene, there's obviously a question that needs to be answered with several specific characters. But otherwise, I think that the 30-minute episode and then this conclusion was enough of these characters' stories that I'd rather see new stories with different characters, different what ifs than What If Part 2. That doesn't interest me as much. And so,
as much as it did before this episode.
Yeah, I was
right. Like we were talking about it up until this point.
We thought it was going to be a lot of season 2 was going to be resolving those stories, and I think no, we've left these characters back where they are, and they're off on their own adventures. Let's start some new ones.
Yeah, I think like for a season 2, I was never under the impression that we would see what would have happened with Peter Quill and Ego, right? Or we would have seen Pepper and Shuri tell their story. But the idea is that they created another chain of events that happens in that universe that is alternately different. We didn't need to go back to it. And that's why I thought like overstuffing this episode with like showing what like those certain cases, sure, it creates a thread of all the different universes you've been through, but at the end of the day, it wasn't necessary. I think it should have just been they were plucked and placed, and this was their task. Let's move on.
But I think
with that, I think if they were to do a season 2, I want them to keep with what they were doing at the beginning of this series, and that is really just, again, being inspired by what fans love and have seen of the MCU and offering new stories and takes on that. And they don't need to be connected. I actually don't think that it worked for them to stay connected, to have some sort of connectivity at the end. I get the idea that the Watcher is, going to intervene and when there's some sort of level of threat. But again, I don't know if that's necessary at the idea of what I at least to take away from What If is just like reimagining the journeys and the stories that we've already seen in a new way and telling new stories. So yeah, I would just want to see more new and less of the idea of trying to keep it threaded. Because I think that with the MCU having everything so connected and so tied up, maybe this animated platform of What If is just for them to be free and to just say, like, why don't we just try to do, like, why don't we do this iteration of the story of a character like this? Like, just have fun with it. And that's what it seems like they did at the beginning. And they kind of really, last 3 episodes, tried to tie it all up to make it mean something more in a true MCU fashion. So yeah, keep it loosey-goosey, have fun with it, right? And tell your stories.
As long as Loosey Goosey doesn't lead to more Party Thor episodes. I do think, though, that
But Party Thor now only serves a purpose because he was in this episode. That was his only purpose for that episode. So I totally agree. We don't need episodes like that for the purpose of setting a person up that is virtually meaningless, right? So,
but I'm just saying, like, the idea of, when we saw that episode, we were kind of like, well, that just really meant all we needed to see was the ending, and that did connect to it. So if we aren't going to be getting connected stories in the future, you want to be cautious not to just have these episodes that are kind of pointless, that don't mean anything.
If it's just a pure anthology series with no connective thread, then it is kind of pointless, and it's just a quick 30-minute story of the week, move on to the next. And,
but I'm
after 30 or 40 of those, it's like, what's the point?
But I'm literally jumping off even just the point of what we watched in that Star Wars Visions. Right? Like, these what ifs are very much that sort of vein of story, which is why, it's not necessary for them to actually venture in doing that. But that being said, I think it doesn't need to be connected.
I would argue for connectiveness is because of the multiverse being such a present threat in the MCU going forward. That's where the bad guys are going to be coming from. And so having this Guardians team in place, even if it's going to be different Guardians every season, is almost crucial because it's protecting our main universe from all these other things, basically. Like, it could be so much worse for the 616 universe if there wasn't a Watcher out there interfering and using these other heroes to stop it all. I mean, again, multiverse is the big thing going forward. So to connect them would show that the multiverse is a connected thing. There isn't much difference between one and the other. And speaking as a fan of the comics, when you look at some of the What If series they've released overall, they're all one-issue takes. So they're very much, like you're saying, unconnected stories that just happen to be a slight change in this universe. But then they've gone back and fleshed out those universes and had them cross over with the main universe. And that is such a more ever-present threat than are the original little one-off stories. So, like, again, it's these seeds that they're planting for the potential next big bad, or giving us a new hero, or finding a way to replace someone in the MCU. It's not going to be directly connected, but it's definitely going to be impactful in the grand scheme of things. At least it's what I think.
Well, I hope it's better than this episode. That's for sure. So,
well, Justin, you're the Ultron of this podcast. So let me just throw my 2 cents in here as the Watcher into the future. I think that is the idea, though, that I love that you kind of brought up, Darcy, is the idea of different teams, different Guardians teams each season. And maybe, you know what? We don't need 5 seasons of this. Give us 2 solid seasons, or even 3. And how cool would it be? We've seen Thanos as a big bad. We've now seen Ultron as a big bad. As we start to get to these more bigger and bigger galactic threats, how sick would it be if we actually got, and it might sound a little silly, but an endgame moment with multiple Guardians of the Multiverse, and you've got all the Watchers there. Maybe we introduce more Watchers in the second season, right? Like, I can see them, if they do want to continue to tie it together, they tie it together through Uatu and Doctor Strange, and then maybe bring these additional characters in at the same time.
Exactly.
And just sort of create this whole almost, multiverse MCU outside of what we have. And that's great. And that's cool, because that means that they can still have people get really excited about what's come before in this storyline, and then start to branch off into maybe a little bit more of their own personalized, more customized thing. And yes, it is moving away a little bit from the What If, but I think What If needs 2 things. It needs, what if something that we know familiar changed slightly to equal this crazy outcome? And as long as you have that, and then you have the teams, the people coming together, I think that works really well from a Marvel standpoint. So I am really excited to see what happens in season 2.
Well, thank you, MODOK.
Yeah.
You called me Ultron. I call you MODOK. So
I'm really excited to see what happens in season 2. But with that said, I think we should wrap up this Watch Club. That is it for the final episode of Watch Club for Marvel's What If Season 1. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Watch Club, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And you might ponder the question, what if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or predictions on the shows we cover in Watch Club? Well, I'll throw that over to our resident timekeeper, Justin.
Well, they can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. But if you'd like to reach us on Twitter, you can reach us at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
And if for some reason you're caught in a multiverse where Instagram doesn't exist for a day, you can feel free to reach out to us.
Count yourself blessed.
Right? Directly through that email again. Keep in mind, we have a ton of other episodes covering the latest and greatest shows and movies out now, including our spoiler-free and spoiler-filled review for Star Wars Visions, where we just gush all over that series. We freaking enjoyed it so much. And we also have dropped our spoiler-free quickfire reviews for both Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales and Muppets Haunted Mansion. And with Muppets Haunted Mansion coming out today.
It would be today when they're listening to it.
There we go. I mean, Justin, you watched all. You know the outcome of when our listeners are listening. So go give those episodes a listen and a 5-star review if you don't mind. Justin, Darcy, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me for this Watch Club. And even though we do not, cannot, and will not interfere, we are
The Watchers.